This program was made possible by a generous grant from the Parker Foundation. Gerald and Inez Parker.
Romance of the Ranchos. The words bring images perpetuated in song and film of happy times, of fiestas, of caballeros dressed in outfits trimmed in silver, and their ladies twirling around a dance floor in long dresses with swirling skirts. Certainly there was that. But there were also long hours of tedious work. 300 Native Americans helped build Rancho Guajome. And there were also reports of a leading ranchero getting away with murder. At one adobe, modern visitors swear they've heard ghosts. These rancheros of North San Diego County were pioneers who lived off the land via cattle, crops, and their strength of character. After Mexico's successful revolution from Spain culminated in 1821, Mexican governors in California began distributing land grants, some of them huge, like the giant 133,000-acre Rancho Santa Margarita y Las Flores, most of which is now one of the largest Marine Corps bases in the world. And some of them were small, down now to only a few acres. Movie stars of their times played bit to major roles in the ranchos. Joan Crawford donated the big tree in the courtyard at Buena Vista, and Charlie Chaplin visited. It was owned by Margarita Fisher, a big star in silent films, and her husband, Harry Pollard, a Hollywood director. And Leo Carrillo, of Cisco Kid television fame, owned his own rancho, reflecting the heritage of his ranchero forebears. Some of the ranchos, Guajome, Buena Vista, and Carrillo, are in public ownership with tours on a regular basis. Others, like those on the Marine base, still allow the public, but on a more restricted basis. Some owners, like Shelley Caron, schedule regular school groups to view her Marron adobe, and others, like Pat and Karen Kelly on portions of the old Rancho Agua Hedionda, still revere the adobe, part of their own private home. Much of the ranch land, including most of the current city of Carlsbad and property that was once owned by Oceanside City Councilman John Steiger, have given way to modern development. In this series, KOCT remembers the adobes and ranchos of early California. Rancho Buena Vista, originally 1,184 acres within the modern-day city of Vista, and nearby Rancho Guajome, originally 2,219 acres, first were granted to Native Americans who soon sold them, and both properties eventually came to be owned by the same man, KOCT, a West Point graduate originally from Tennessee. He came to California with the Army and married Isadora Bondini, a member of one of San Diego's most influential families. This map on the wall of the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe shows the extent to which Mexican land grants were doled out to political favorites in North San Diego County. Docent Pat Fellows takes us around the Buena Vista Adobe and tells us the story of the ghost she says has made its presence known.
My name is Pat. I'm a docent at the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe in Vista, California. We are going to tour the adobe today, which dates back to 1845 for the land grant, but we'll be touring an actual adobe house today. So hopefully you're going to enjoy the tour as much as I enjoyed it, so come on in. As you come to the gate, the first thing you'll notice is a beautiful magnolia tree, which was planted in 1932 by Joan Crawford. This was probably a gift to the Pollards for a vacation that she spent with them. The Pollards, Margarita Fisher Pollard was a silent film star, and her husband Harry Pollard was a movie director. They owned the property for about 20 years. During that time, they employed an architectural engineer out of Los Angeles who did the landscaping for the courtyard as it is today. He built the walls, he put the fountain in, and it has been retained in this same condition since he completed it. Although Margarita Fisher Pollard continued to live here after Harry's death, unfortunately he died about 4 years after they moved into the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. The courtyard is well used. It's used for weddings several weekends a year, sometimes for receptions, picnics, anything that the community is interested. But I think presently it's being used for a junior-senior prom that will be coming up in June, probably. First time that's ever happened. Our original land grant was given to us in 1845. It consisted of 1,184 acres. It was given to Philippe Sabria, who was an Indian. He was instrumental in helping Christianize the people at Mission San Luis Rey. And it was a token grant, as the average land grants in San Diego County were around 12,000 acres. I believe that he picked this place on the 1,184 acres because there is a small stream going behind this, and I believe he can raise his vegetables and crops like that. We are in the original room that has been changed, obviously, because it was originally a reed-covered hut. As time went on, they changed this into a genuine adobe. If you'll notice how thick the walls are, this is adobe through and through. Some of the acquisitions that we have date back to the time when we had no plumbing, no electricity, which would consist of your wash basins and your restroom, which I always kid the fourth graders when I have them in field trips, and I tell them that it was the fourth graders' boys that was their duty to change that in the morning. They didn't like that real well. Every rancho has legends about it. Of course, we have Isadora, who runs through the courtyard at night because she did not want to leave the adobe. She had to, but she did not want to leave the adobe. And this one has a specific legend of the very valuable horse. It's called El Rojo. The horse was owned by KOCT, who was one of the owners, and he was a very valuable horse. But because of people wanting to steal him, they would bring him in here at night and sleep with him in the bedroom. As the children go through, they'll learn about the horse in the bedroom, therefore it's called the Stinky Room. I love this room. It has a lot of really, really beautiful things in it. Originally, it was a bunkhouse, and the adobe was built kind of like topsy. It just grew. This house has probably been many things. It was the master bedroom, the last private owner, the Schoeffels, but it's been a bunkhouse. It's been what we call now a gathering room. We have family rooms now. They called it a gathering room. The important things in here, I think, would be the chandelier and the wall sconces. They're hand carved out of Mexican cedar. They came from the summer home of Porfirio Diaz, who was a Mexican statesman, eventually became president of Mexico. They were given to us in pieces in a box, and they were put together by one of our docents' husbands who did woodwork. But they're very, very beautiful. They're hand-carved cedar, and they're in the Roman Greco style, which represents the people coming, the Europeans coming to the New World. This is the third room we'll visit today, but it was an original carriage entrance into the courtyard. They did not have the formal courtyard that's there today because this was a working ranch. These ceilings obviously are different. This was added later, and it was made into a bathroom in probably the early 1900s when water and electricity came to Vista. The Pollards, when they moved in 1930, put in the decorative tile. This happens to be Italian tile. We have the double wash basins, which was a Hollywood thing. I'm sure as a normal house would not have had two wash basins in the 1930s. The still pictures are pictures of films that Margarita Fisher Pollard starred in, and she was a silent film star only. Her husband did go on and direct talkies. As you know, he directed one of Joan Crawford's. In the late 1920s, there was a contest throughout the United States to choose the most popular movie star, and even though it was a silent film, the most popular was Margarita Fisher Pollard. At that time, she won over Claire Bow, and Claire Bow I had heard of before, but until I came to the Adobe, I had never heard of Margarita Fisher Pollard. We've just entered the sala from the fourth room. This would be the last room that was built that brought the Adobe together and made it an L shape. This was probably built, completed around 1875, but it's a beautiful, large room where I can just see them roll back the rugs and have a real good time in here. It's what we would call today an entertainment room or a living room. They had gathering rooms instead of family rooms, and that would have been the one that we visited that had the chandelier. This room does have the different ceilings, and they're very large boards because we have no, at that time we did not have the wood down here to make the large cuts, so it's done in what they call a shiplap. The large chandelier was given to us again. It had to be electrified. It was originally made for candles, but it's 8 feet across also, and it had to be cut and brought through the doors and re-welded. So that's a really nice thing, and I don't think it would fit in my living room. The original door is the one to my right. That would have been the entryway. That was changed after the last private owners owned it. And the shutters are the original shutters from the 1800s. So we have shutters because that was for protection for the people around here, because the closest place that you could find any other place to stay for the night would have been Mission San Luis Rey, which is about 17 miles away. And some of the shutters, I think the ones in the gathering room, have the crosses in them, and they were not significant as far as religion. They were gun slots. Another one I want to think, although we're not talking about acquisitions, the beautiful piano here was made in New York City, came around South America because there was no Panama Canal, and it's hand carved, beautiful, beautiful, out of rosewood. And it also was an acquisition for us. As everyone knows, adobes must all have a legend and spooky ghosts and people that travel through it. But one evening we were here, the Paranormal Society, and I was present. We were trying to contact some of the past owners. When asked in English if anyone was here, there was silence. Nobody answered. But then later on, we got one of our docents who speaks Spanish said, well, maybe an early settler didn't speak English. It was probably Spanish. So he asked, is anyone here? Is anyone here? And the microphones picked up very softly, hello. So there are ghosts in Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. We are presently in what is now a chapel. When the city of Vista purchased it in 1989, This was an old bathroom. Well, they had intended to make it into a museum, so a bathroom would not be very appropriate. So they converted it into a small chapel. There probably was a chapel on the property, but we do not know where it was, so they did this. The stained glass window was given to us as a gift from one of our docents in honor of her husband, who is deceased. And the prie-dieu, or the kneeler, is out of Mission San Luis Rey. It was used in the wedding ceremony of one of the Maroons, probably about 100 years ago. One of the interesting things is this would have been one of the later rooms to be built, which brought this part together and that part together, but the sala would complete it into the L shape. Presently, we're in what we call now the workroom, because there's nothing in here that works with electricity. This would be the ordinary, everyday person's tools that they would use. We have a shoe last, and of course in the days that we had shoe lasts, there were no right and left shoes. You just had a piece of leather, you made shoes, and you could wear it on either foot that you chose. We have dancing shoes that women wore, and notice how very small they are. Of course, the house is all lit with candles, so we have a large candle holder, and the candles were made out of tallow. Today, the children who you'll see occasionally in here make it out of paraffin. We have about 8,000 or 9,000 children a year that go through the room on a field trip, so they are able to see the things that people used in the 1850s. We have the pedal sewing machine, which today is still used in third world countries. The woodwork that a gentleman would use, no electric tools again, everything hand tools. The desks, which represent homeschooling, because the children would have to be homeschooled here, as the closest school would be at Mission San Luis Rey, which is about 17 miles from here. And then kind of a unique thing is the typewriter. The typewriter is probably 1886, but it has 2 keyboards. So if you wanted to have a capital letter, you had to move up a whole keyboard instead of using a shift key. In fact, that's where the, long time ago when you did hand setting and printing, that's where the term came from, was uppercase and lowercase. Children would help with the printing, but they didn't recognize whether it was a small a or a large a. So they would put the small print down and the larger print up, and whoever was in charge would say, bring me a lowercase a or an uppercase a. That's where we get the saying today of lower and uppercase. This is the last room of the adobe that we will visit today. When we go into the other part of the house, it will be board and batten, not adobe. I hope you've noticed the thickness of the walls that we've gone through, because this is genuine adobe. Originally, this room was the cookhouse, and it was built far away from the first room that we visited today because of fire. Well, this was originally the cookhouse, smokehouse, whatever, but as the ranch grew and we had cattle and sheep, we had to have a foreman of the ranch, or the mayordomo, he was called. This would be where he would conduct his business. This is also where he lived. He has everything that he needs in here, the bed that he sleeps on, the desk that he does his work on, so this would be his domain, the mayordomo. Some of the other things that we want to point out in here, and basically they're used for the school, for the children. These are things that they would not ordinarily see. One would be the cow's hide, which was used as a barter system. We have a replica of a rifle, and it would be the kind that Davy Crockett would use. Some of the other things that you'll see would be the Indian pots that we have in here, and the large D for our brand. Mr. Dunn was the second owner, and he was the one that registered the D for the brand for the adobe. The tile in here was put in by Margarita Fisher Pollard. It happens to be Mexican tile. Like I say, every Every adobe has to have a legend of some kind. We have 2 or 3 here, but the one that we'll point out now is a wall, a very thick wall, that has bones in it. Supposedly these would be bones of an Indian, and they were discovered when they were trying to put electricity through from one wall to the other, from this room into the workroom. So, but the gentleman saw the walls, simply patched it back up, and left it, so we have that legend that we have in here today. We are now in the newest part of the adobe, which is the dining room. This room, there's 3 rooms, were built between 1890 and 1904, and they are not adobe, they are board and batting. The tile that you see on the windowsill is Mexican tile put in by Margarita Fisher Pollard in the 1930s. And there's also the only heat in the public rooms in the adobe would be the fireplaces. One of the former owners said that this was the only house she ever had where she had to put on her fur coat when she had her breakfast in the morning. This will be the 3rd room in the new wing. And in the kitchen we have retained fairly modern, mostly because of the use by the school marms for the school programs. The children come here on a field trip, and sometimes they will make cornbread, sometimes tortillas, cookies, so we have had to maintain the kitchen as a working kitchen. Basically, the things we have in here are for the children to see. They're very old and things that probably they would not have seen before. The pantry was originally open shelves because the people who came here had to go to San Diego to get their things like rice, beans, flour, and they were open shelving because they would only go to San Diego every 2 or 3 months, as it was about a 3-day trip down there. However, when the Pollards purchased it, they put doors on it, and they brought their maid and their chef down here with them, so then it became a genuine pantry where the chef did his preparation. Thank you for visiting the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. This concludes our tour, and we are standing at what would have been the original entrance. You would come riding up on your horses and go through the carriage entrance into the courtyard. However, the last private owners changed this entrance into the Alta Vista entrance. Prior to that time, you would come up through here, through a long driveway, which had palm trees on each side, a very impressive entrance. However, they changed it and divided the property off. But we now have about 2 acres today, so we hope that you come and enjoy our beautiful Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. We enjoyed having you. We have weddings here, we have receptions, and tours from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 2. So come and join us someday when you're out and want to see what our beautiful downtown gem of Rancho Buena Vista Adobe is.
And the last private owners of Rancho Buena Vista, Sally and Rudd Schoeffel, tell us what it was like raising a family in an old hacienda.
All the joys of an older property, which presents its own challenges, but it was just an amazing place to live and for our children to grow up. First of all, just a lot of space, and just a very different life, and not only for our children, but all of their local friends. Typically, I mean, we never knew who was coming for meals and so on, but we'd always have a full house. We bought the property from the Wheels, Dr. and Mrs. Wheel, and the reason, I mean, Rudd had known Dr. Wheel
for years.
I'll let you explain that.
He was my ophthalmologist as a child up in Toluca Lake, and We had heard that he was putting the rancho up for sale, so we contacted him, and he said he'd very much like to sell it to us. We wanted to move to a small community like Vista to raise our children, and so we arranged to buy the rancho from Dr. Will, and we closed escrow in March of 1973. When we first came here, the original rancho had its entry off of what used to be called Escondido Avenue, right down off of the main street. And there were orange groves on either side where all the professional buildings are now. And you would just drive up this entryway that was lined with queen palms on either side. And then you'd go back to the old adobe garage. And we had to change that when we were building the center here, so we had what's called, as part of a flag lot, the pole section went out to Alta Vista Drive, so we changed our entryway to come off of Alta Vista Drive. And the old gates that used to be on Escondido Avenue, which were just for decorative purposes, they were too far away to close and seal. We actually created gates that could actually close. We had an experience with a ghost. Yeah, one of our housekeepers years ago disappeared, left her clothes behind. We kept them for about a year, and we finally gave up. We thought she'd never come back, so we gave them to the Cancer Society down in the South Santa Fe Center. The very next day she came back, and I said, "What happened?" You know, and she said, well, she was in bed reading, and a ghost walked into her room dressed in white and sat down in the bed and started chatting with her. And she just
She was so terrified.
Terrified. She just got up and left and left all her clothes and everything. And you know, to my knowledge, she had no knowledge of the story. That's been a story that it was one of the ladies who used to live here, and she would come back and visit people. But that actually happened to her.
One night when Rudd was out of town, I was reading in my bedroom, and I heard this chink, chink, chink coming closer and closer through the Galleria. And I'm like, no, I'm just my imagination. But no, it kept getting louder and closer. And I remembered the stories that had been told about, you know, the Cave Count's horse and Cave Count's and all of these old stories. I got up my courage, opened the door, and here was this huge St. Bernard dog with a big choke chain around its neck, chink, 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 and I'm like, but I think that's how so many of the stories get started, and obviously there was a very rational explanation.
Visiting hours for the Adobe at 640 Alta Vista Drive, Vista, are 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Thursday through Saturday. Non-residents pay $4. Discounted rates are available for residents, seniors, and children.
This program was made possible by a generous grant from the Parker Foundation. Gerald and Inez Parker.